Welcome everyone to another Spotlight session. Incredibly excited to be welcoming Sonya Law from SL Human Resources Consulting. First of all, Sonya, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Martin, for the opportunity. Great to be here.
Yeah, and sort of you've actually been working with my co-founder partner, Ash Richardson, on a couple of things, and you're really connected on the minds really of what you're doing and what we're doing at stratapp, and we're really excited to have you on board. So would you love to do the, I'd love you to do this. Can you just give everybody an introduction of yourself and what you're doing as part of your consulting organization?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, just a brief introduction to myself. Born in New Zealand, arrived here when I was 6 years old. So it just gives you a bit of a insight into my early childhood. But yeah, most of my time here in Australia. Worked in corporate in HR last 30 years. Degree qualified HR, teaching, a master's in business. And last year during the pandemic, decided I wanted to leave corporate and give back to my community of HR in the way of consulting, so I can work with many people. So there's three things I do. I coach. I also do employment matters, and I do a lot around wellness and fitness because I believe in the holistic self. So they're the three things I do, and a lot of recruiting, seeking out talent. I'm an executive search consultant as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, we're excited because you're actually, you touch on, well, I'm going to actually give yourself and us a bit of a plug. You actually made a comment on LinkedIn about stratapp on actually an Atlassian post. So we thank you very much for that. It was very kind of you. But
Very welcome.
You and I are sort of getting to know each other as well. And one of the things that I've really gravitated towards yourself is around the way you look at diversity and inclusion, right? Which our technology is very passionate about. It's taking everyone on the journey. There's no one should be left behind. So do you want to share a little bit more about your passion on that? Because I'd love to share that with the audience and maybe dive a bit deeper as well.
Yes, great question. Thank you. I guess diversity inclusion is really different for everyone, and it's typically based on our experiences, our life experiences, and where we were born, and sort of our perspective. I've always taken a pretty sort of broad view, and it's probably from my early childhood years of finding diversity quite interesting. So people with different thinking and different backgrounds makes the workplace a really interesting place, and it actually leads to more engagement and also lower staff turnover. So I had many employees say to me, you make it really hard to leave here because it's such a fun place to work. Everyone's so interesting.
Awesome. Yeah.
So I'm probably not someone who just employs someone like me or the same people. Yes. I definitely pick people from lots of different backgrounds and thinking, because that's really when it thrives, and you get different opinions, and you get actually innovation as well. Yes. So there's lots of ways you can do it, but it's definitely recruiting it in and living it in a really authentic way. So it's not just to tick the box. Yes. We've got D&I. It's actually the senior leadership role modeling diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, well, now you touch on something really interesting because I think we tend to gravitate towards people who we have natural connections with.
Yes.
Whether it's personality or whether it's background or whatever it may be. So what would you say to a leader who wants to open up to be more diverse? What would sort of you give you some advice to? What are the things that they need to consider?
Yeah, the top two things I would say is to lean in and listen.
Yeah,
definitely. That's the most natural thing I do. If someone is different from me, I lean in and I listen and I learn.
Yes.
So lean in, listen and learn.
Yeah.
Really. And you appreciate, when you really appreciate in an authentic way someone that has a different perspective or from a different background. It's really interesting, and you
Yes.
become engaged.
Yep.
And really, it's those conversations, those interactions that you have in the most authentic way, no matter what the scenario is. Yeah, actually, that's how leaders can most authentically do it. Yeah.
You talked about earlier, I don't know if it's going to come back to a vulnerability word, maybe. I don't know if it's going to come back to vulnerability. But we talked a bit about earlier the empathy side of leadership, right?
Yes.
Compassion,
Mm.
gratitude. And, a lot of us, we believe we are a leader, but we have to actually have a persona, I
Yes.
guess is the word. But you talked about that empathy and gratitude. Just maybe share a little bit more what your thinking there is. And again, how do you help leaders if it's not their natural approach and
Yeah.
it's run, win at all costs? How do you coach that leader to maybe take a step back and really review what's important?
Yeah, this is something I've really observed the last 10 years with the senior leadership team. And um, CEO was quite honest about saying that he didn't feel like he had, much empathy, and
Mhm.
that's why he hired me.
Yeah.
So that's obviously a very good CEO, because they know where the,
Oh,
the gaps are, and they hire it in.
yeah.
So what I would do is, when I noticed
Yeah.
that he displayed empathy, I would, afterwards speak to him and say, like, I really like the way that you were really vulnerable, and
Mhm.
talked about how difficult it was to do those, redundancies, and to let people go. And, often it's, when they're most vulnerable, people lean in and become engaged by them, because they're not their normal sort of reporting out. Their persona changes, their tone changes.
Yeah.
You can hear a bit of emotion in their voice. So it's really just letting them know that that was effective,
Mhm.
because that's what they do want to be able to communicate sort of effectively. And that's I use that word because for CEOs, they want that.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, it's really just to be them, to basically acknowledge it when they do it, and say, look, that was, positively reinforce it.
Yeah.
And explain what that's done to the culture, that's done to people's experiences, how well they've accepted the change, how
Yeah.
well they've accepted difficult information, how much easier that's going to be for us to adapt, and then to create a different, different path forward.
Yes.
Because the longer that a company, when you are going through things like restructure, they grieve the people that are left behind and that you've lost.
Yeah.
And then that grief itself can really be quite disruptive to business, and not very productive.
Yeah.
So, leaning in, being vulnerable, is not wallowing in it. It's
Mhm.
actually picking yourself up, saying, meeting it with the right words, with the right actions, and moving on together as a group,
Yeah.
and pushing sort of forward. And
But acknowledging what has happened at the same time. So
yeah, that's
getting
right.
them to understand it, and then they can process it, and then we can move it forward. Yeah.
And the same process is really for diversity as
Yeah.
well. If
Yeah.
there's been some conflict, or, within the organization, or, not respecting, then it's acknowledgement, and then it's, understanding, education, and then moving on. It's a really good strategy for most, change management.
So I'm going to ask you a question, and you've got you've got the same level of experience I have, as in tenure of years that we've worked in the corporate world. Let's go back, 20 years ago. Are you seeing the big shift in leadership style now? Because even some of those points that you talked about around acknowledgement, or we talked about empathy, they weren't necessarily, I know when I started in the business world, they weren't necessarily natural traits.
Oh, absolutely.
Very hierarchy driven, very top down. You were
Oh,
told
yeah.
what to do, and you just got on and did it. Well, through our technology, we've said there's going to be a better way. There's got to be a better way to lead your company, to align,
Absolutely.
prioritize, and get everyone on board in a way that they need to be empowered, not the way that we traditionally said empowerment work. So have you seen over those decades, have you seen the big shift? And what's the really, I'd love to pick one or two, three really strong traits you're seeing really good leaders today.
Yeah, absolutely. In the past, my mum was national sales manager for an international publishing company.
Yeah.
So I saw her, be deputy sales manager, national sales manager, then on the leadership team. And I very much saw the way that she was operating, was working very long hours,
Yes.
working very hard, and it was literally all business, no pleasure, and you didn't really talk about your personal life. They were very separate and they're very compartmentalized, and that's very much not all baby boomers, but a lot of them. There's a line between home life and work life, whereas I'm noticing more now that it's about being holistic and recognizing the whole person. That home life and work life are just as important, and we actually want to know about that during the pandemic. And I think the CEO of Atlassian was on the project, I think earlier this week, talking about it, and he said that people are bringing their whole selves to work. So therefore, as leaders, we need to see them as a whole person, not just the job that they do. But about their family and what interests they have and what they do in their downtime. Actually having that more holistic approach. And I would have to say most leaders are actually doing that.
Yes.
There's still a few that are a little bit uncomfortable with it, but they're exploring it, which is really all you want to see. But I still think that we need to ourselves role model and give permission to people within our charge, to take those breaks. And because they look to the CEO and they look to the leadership team for guidance. So it's very much giving permission to self-care.
And I love that, because actually Crystal Beaumont, who was actually on now, the CEO of Talend, was on our spotlight session a number of months or shows ago. And I'd been associated with Crystal before, and I learned from her. She sort of reversed engineered the leadership model.
Yes.
She knew what the business needed and how we're going to break it down and all this sort of stuff. But really her mindset was, I'm going to sit down with my team and work out what's important to them.
That's brilliant.
And she was really good. So when she did the goal setting, it was actually their goals. And now the question was, how do I help you achieve them?
Absolutely.
And she re-engineered it up. And the way she did it, the passion that people worked when they worked with her, but she's also a classic example. And now she is a CEO of a public company.
Yes.
But she's really not, that person that's everyone looks to it great, but she works with everyone at the same speed. She doesn't always run ahead and go catch up. And by the way, whoever goes behind. So she's quite an amazing leader, and that's been around for a while. And hence she was really passionate about our tech, actually. Because it's about how do we take everyone for the journey. And by the way, the person who joined yesterday will have just as strong opinion as the person that's been on board 20 years.
Definitely.
So how do we allow them to come together in a space that allows them to breathe the way that they want to?
I love that.
Yeah, just loving what you're saying on that. And it's part of sort of the logic of how even stratapp came about, because it wasn't just about the strategy and the why the company and the strategy and the short-term focus, which we have. It was more about how do we now enable the teams with the right set of tools.
Yes, absolutely.
As successful as the business is supposed to be. And you really had to be at people level to really understand that element.
It's really inclusive, because as you say, a new person coming in, or someone's been there 20 years, the value of the idea is just as important.
Correct.
And I love that.
Yeah. And so I agree on the leadership piece as well, because if leaders can't be vulnerable themselves, how are they asking everyone else to be vulnerable? And my sense is that it's ticking over to that 30 to 50%, and hopefully it will go 60, 70, 80, 90, where we are bringing the whole self. And by the way, we're getting to acknowledge what that self means.
Yeah, I have an example. One of our technicians who was working on a mine site, he was fly in, fly out, and he was a remote worker, and he was going back to his hotel, and in the reception area he collapsed. He had a brain aneurysm.
Yeah.
And he's
Wow.
a young dad with a 2-year-old daughter and a partner. And my immediate sort of feeling towards that was to speak to the family. Of course, we have the safety manager looking after, all the other things that you need to go through.
Yes.
And they're actually in a really difficult sort of financial situation, which I learned from talking with them. And I actually started up, one of those pages. Is it a GoFundMe page?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And it was just my sort of instant reaction to go, I think we need to do this. And the Newcastle community and the newspaper and the businesses in the area, and so many people got behind it. And I think within 5 days, it was like $25,000 because essentially the main breadwinner, he
Yeah.
was, out of action.
Yes.
And then, the wife wasn't working, and then you've got a child. And so it's times when, true, that something happens within the business and you feel a human emotion. And normally where you draw a line, cross
Yeah.
over it,
Yeah.
like actually cross over it.
Yeah.
And I know it's uncomfortable and you're like, oh, have I got permission? Have I got authority for this? Or, is this going to go into some territory I'm not going to be able to handle? Just try it.
Yes.
Just try it, because often that gut feeling or that human emotion is what best directs our empathy.
Yes.
In sort of the right way.
Yeah. No, I love this. I had I think I was sharing with you just before this because I was having a chat with Rajiv Singh, the co-founder at Concur, and
Yes.
it was late 2013, and I said he's such an amazing leader. I just asked him the very simple question of how do you lead when you're not in the room?
Yeah.
When you're in the room, you inspire people. You may inspire me for 6 months, you may inspire a person for a week, but how do you actually engage when you're not in the room? And that was a really interesting thing of how do we participate at all levels of the organization where it's completely contextual, but a simple thing like a thumbs up.
Oh, absolutely.
CEO, it just fuels the energy that they're looking, but they're trying to understand as well how they can help me. And
Yeah,
if we find
definitely.
that's the bridging between the way we believe our own values as people to how do we allow technology to play a role to
Yeah,
interact with that space.
absolutely. It's so scalable when you've got tech. It's, we've got a problem with social connectedness at the moment with, work from home and people aren't in the traditional sort of office format. It's hybrid. Having that one workspace where you can collaborate, share ideas, share the vision, allocate tasks, and connect people with their why and their purpose, but then have this whole social community where you can, chat about it and celebrate along the way and recognize people. And that becomes a community, and that's the community that enables organizations to thrive. We're social beings, we want to be with each other, but then some people too don't want to be physically with each other. That's intimidating because some people are more confident, but those that are quieter, they've got just as good ideas. And I feel like the inclusivity of a platform is that anybody can have a great idea. It's not just, someone like me chatting away and very confident to speak.
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
So it's about recognizing people that are quieter and,
Yeah, it's sort of. I had a great example and sorry to give straight up a plug.
Sorry, my husband watched Netflix last night and he unplugged me. So I'm just going to plug myself in.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Ash likes to keep some of these bloopers in there too.
Oh, good. Technology.
We had a really good one where I was doing a quick sound check with a couple of guys, sound check, and they go, "What?" I said, "Sound check," and then they go, "Playing with you, Marty." And then I got to the end and I said, "Hey, Todd, I'd love you to wrap up." And he goes, "Yeah, Todd, can you hear me?" Todd, he goes, "Marty, can you hear?" I said, "Gotcha, Todd." We actually we left that one in. We actually left it in.
You've got to have fun.
Yeah. Hey, what I'd love to sort of, and mindful of time as well, what I'd love to ask you about, because you touched on it at a recent conference that you hosted, which was around the millennial space.
Yes. Yeah.
And sort of we're incredibly passionate, same as you, of everyone on the journey. There's no one going to be left behind. And we've got great examples of clients onboarding people within hours now that are actually in the business, talking across 4 countries, getting stuff done in less than 24 hours of starting their job. And
Yeah.
people have come on board saying, that is amazing. I can't believe you did that within that period. Hey, I've reviewed it. That's excellent work. Like that energy in 24 hours of onboarding a person.
Yeah.
Very powerful. And by the way, the owner of the business just set the actual direction, and Frank gave him full empowerment to work. Right? Very, very cool examples. Now, you talked about millennials and the way that they think and the way that they operate. I'd just love to get your perspective on it, and how, as leaders, should we be thinking about embracing the power of them right now?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's, you've got your, I pick on the baby boomers, sorry to the baby boomers, but they an easy target because they don't like technology as much. Yeah. And they compartmentalize a lot of things and intellectualize a lot of things and fear failure, broadly speaking.
Yeah.
However, millennials, they're very comfortable with technology. And they're very curious and they're very open-minded and they're very innovative. And, they're the minds that we need for the future of work, because as we saw in the pandemic, how much we have to pivot, in lots of scenarios. It's how can we embrace the knowledge of the millennials and all generations, but really play to the strengths of the millennials who are so comfortable with working in a tech space, because it's always so scalable and have more impact and reach when you use technology in different ways. And it does certainly help with, diversity and inclusion as well. So interesting, at the moment, I'm doing an executive search and it was one role to be filled, but I've looked for a millennial. So, and I've looked for someone, more sort of Gen X, because the way I want it to work is that, I've got the millennials got these great ideas, but I've got the Gen X who's a great coach and is going to facilitate the innovation and the ideas that person has and give them confidence. So this is, great cohabitation that can occur when we draw out the strengths of each other, because often, and one of the comments from a baby boomer in my recent article on the 5 Bs of baby boomers and how to cultivate a culture of innovation was, it was Ron Slee, and he won't mind me mentioning it. He said, for far too long, we've disrespected the millennials, and now it's come back to haunt us. So remembering that, having a workplace that is actually fun and interactive and meets their needs and their values. And actually, being a bit more sort of open to giving feedback to millennials as well, so that because they're very comfortable with getting feedback, and so that they can, shift their approach, and for baby boomers to be a bit more empathetic with, as well. This all helps to cultivate that culture, because otherwise, who's going to work for them? Like they forget.
I think I already know who my boss is. It's my 11-year-old, who I said was the Jaggers Enterprises when she was 8.
100%.
I think she's been here before, and I just said, "You are the future. You're basically
the future."
Yeah, and I've got and my niece. I shared something with her in relation. Actually, it was actually our last video we did, where a millennial talks about stratapp. And I showed it to her and she goes, if I was able to have pure clarity on who we are and what we do, and then the full ownership of getting the job done.
Absolutely.
It would be completely different.
There's no reason that they can't.
Yeah, and they've got so much more capacity, right, than what we're leveraging right now. And so I love the way you're looking at it and you're thinking about it, and sort of, it's sort of funny when we connect with people, we were sort of millennials back in our day. Right? We already knew we were constantly pushing boundaries. Those challenging status quo, which got us to where we are today. Then when I look at this new gen, they're really no different. They just have so much more resources.
They're brilliant.
It's another step up. And I think, in essence, our generation should be proud of it.
So proud.
whole culture and that the whole idea of embracing, and hopefully they'll take it to another level of inclusion and
I hope
things.
so. I can't wait to watch.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly
See
right.
what they
I'm
do.
going to ask you just one final question. You connected with Ash, my co-founder partner, and I'd just love to get your thoughts on what you saw in stratapp in relation to what you were doing, and how you were thinking about what we're doing in the market and how that potentially helps what you're doing and how organizations are moving in the market.
Yeah, really it started with last year. We at Sala Hitachi received an award for solving society's problem, which was the problem was social connectedness during the pandemic. So we leveraged an IT platform that essentially connected people during that period of time.
Yes.
And so I've got a bit of a tech background. I used to program.
Yeah.
So I love IT. I'm not afraid of it. I think it's, it's great. So I'm always thinking about what's the IT solution, what's the problem first, what's the social problem, and Hitachi's really big on that. So, and then thinking about how can I use IT to solve the problem.
Yes.
So as a HR professional, when I'm out listening to people, in sort of leadership, I hear about a lot of inefficiencies, particularly having lots of different programs and workspaces and so forth. And then when I was sort of looking at stratapp, I think, well, this is just one platform for one thing. You're going to one spot, not various. You can collaborate there. You can share ideas there. You can set the purpose, connect people with, what you're doing, why you're doing it, allocate tasks so people can get job satisfaction.
Yep.
I really connected with, wow, you could put knowledge in there from your baby boomers, and then you can, tap in your millennials for a greater innovation.
Yes.
And really sort of harness that sort of, that innovation, that growth sort of mindset, which is so important for an organization in order just to grow and, to get better, because that's the idea.
Yes.
We want to get better at what we do, but we need to start with a growth mindset. But we also need to leverage technology so it's scalable and that we're all on the same page, heading in the same direction.
Yes.
Because we're a business after all still.
Yeah.
So, and, it's a great way to approach, problems. I really enjoyed participating in the innovation challenge during the pandemic to come up with a new idea, and then collaborating, with my team and think about prototyping and testing. And, it was a really great experience. And if we do more of that within stratapp, and then, we're going to see more growth, and people are going to feel like they're actually making a difference, because we do want purpose in our day. We do want meaning.
Yes.
We do want to make a difference, and it shouldn't just be for some of the leaders or managers to be occupying that space. It should be inclusive for everyone to come up with an idea, no matter how long they've been there and what position they hold. As I talked about titles before, which I don't love, and titles and boxes and org charts, I don't love at all. I feel like it's better to think of, the collective, the collective minds, and then, find a way to kind of really harness that. And it sounds like that's what you do stratapp.
Yeah, it's sort of, I just love the idea of the way you think, right? Because you also said something earlier, which I really loved, around how do I align on values?
Yes.
But it's not necessarily the person I would traditionally get on well with, right? Which is up, whatever that matches for you. It's the values, and values are a little bit different, because values can mean one thing to millions of people, right? And as long as you've got the same values and everyone understands them, everyone can form their own opinion. Does it match mine or not? And then when they can at least form the opinion and make decisions on it, they're so much more engaged on the direction that we're going.
Absolutely.
And I love how you position it. I just love it, because it's sort of, and the other thing you touched on, you mentioned the word task, which can be so tedious by nature, right? Give me a task. Yeah. I didn't get inspired by task, but when task context.
Collective, yep.
Yeah, when you give task purpose.
Yes.
And when I understand, not just for me, but for my team or for my division or for my
Yeah.
organization and what we
Yeah.
do for society and communities, that I get energized by that.
That's what great leaders do. They
Yeah.
say, to the machinists on the shop floor in manufacturing, by you putting that thing on that brake or that tire or that car, that
Yes.
keeps everyone safe on the roads. Like
Yes.
when
Yeah.
people understand that task that they do and how it connects them with, this great, this great sort of thing that you're doing. And,
Yeah.
and leaders will constantly be reminding people about how they fit in, how valuable they are,
Yes.
and get them excited and inspired about what they do. Because at the end of the day, it does actually become a whole bunch of tasks.
There's things to do, right? Yeah,
You've got
absolutely.
to be a cheerleader and right in there, and this is why we're doing it, and
And
re-engage people.
I'd like to see leaders get more. And I had this conversation in another spotlight session when I said, if I could give a leader full granularity, like living, breathing, live, interactive insights to what's breathing across the business, how many would really drill down on it, or how many would wait for a graph to tell me what's happening retrospectively and doing it? And I'm just not. The reality is we can do that today with technology. And by
Yeah.
the way, people crave it.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yep.
another CEO said to me, "My people are lonely. It's COVID. They're all in their home looking at the thing, doing their jumping on another Zoom, and and they're all getting zoomed out, and then the idea there's another ding ding, and it's everyone's sort of whoa whoa whoa, hold on. But if we can get it in a real purposeful and structured way to say, you know what, this is what matters. And if
Yes.
you're doing anything outside that, I want you to make the decision: is it the right thing to do, or is it not? Right?
Yeah.
I love the mindset, 4-day weeks. I love it, but unless you can really enable it,
Yes.
it can get very wild very quickly. And that's what
Absolutely.
we're passionate about, helping people just drive back to. So if Martin gets the ability to work a 40-hour week, but Martin says, you know what, I know exactly what I need to do. I could do that in 32.
Yes.
Right? Let me do it in 32 and be okay with the extra gym session or the extra yoga session, etc. But now we're all on the same page.
Absolutely.
Moving at the same speed, and we all know exactly where we sit right this moment.
Definitely, because execution is a really big part of business as well.
Yeah,
And, productivity, of course, because they're all things that we look at, revenue per head count, and we measure productivity and how much money we're making, because that makes us financially sustainable and sensible. So there's all those business frameworks we must operate within. But yeah, it's yeah, I mean, that's probably the boring stuff, but you got to think of that stuff as well.
oh,
So.
that's awesome. I cannot thank you enough. We're really excited to be working with you. You come with an aura, you come with an energy, and I just love what you're doing in relation to how you're working with organisations to help them advance in a new world. And I hope our partnership flourishes. And I just wanted to say, on behalf of Ash and I, the team at stratapp and our audience, thank you very much for joining us on Spotlight.
Very welcome, Martin. Thank you for the opportunity.
Great. Thanks, Sonya.
Thank you. Bye.